I can. 100. Ask in the chat if it's working. Oh, that's right. There it is. Let's see if Christy says yes.
Hi ladies, it's Carrie Ann with Options for Senior Living. I am a certified senior resource and placement specialist, and I am here to help you and your senior loved ones in whatever way I can, whether that's looking for veteran benefits, Medicaid, senior resources, finances, services, needs, whatever that may be. I am a free service to you all, and I would be honored to help any of you with your senior loved ones, especially now during these tough times. So please give me a call. I'd love to chat with you if you need any help or know anyone that does. So take care, ladies, and be safe.
It's been said, time heals all wounds. I don't agree. Scars remain. Every scar holds a memory, a reminder of our fragility, of our humanity, but also our strengths. No doubt about it, scars impact us physically and emotionally, more than you realize, more than you know. I think it would be fair to say for some people, they would give almost anything to feel normal again. Make an appointment for McLaughlin's scar tissue release treatment and feel the difference. Download the Sunshine app on Apple Store or Google Play.
I believe I am on, so hopefully all of you can hear me. I want to welcome you all here today to our Women Empowered virtual broadcast. My name is Christy Botain, and I'm with Meadows Bank. I'm also the chair for the Women Empowered Committee, as well as on the board of directors for the Chamber. I want to welcome you all and thank you for being here with us for our event, Women in Community. Come celebrate with us. You were all sent an agenda in the link to this broadcast, so definitely follow that so you can kind of see who's coming up. Each of our speakers today will have about 20 minutes to talk, and then we'll hopefully have about 5 minutes or so for a Q&A. If you do have any questions, please make sure to post those in the chat box, and we will certainly do our best to get those questions answered. We will also hopefully have some time at the end of our event to answer any follow-up questions as well. The Women Empowered Committee is a program of the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce. The mission of this committee is to empower business women through leadership development, collaborative connections for business growth, resources and support to grow their business, allowing them to embrace their unique strengths, resulting in a powerful impact on our community. This programming is made possible by the generosity of our chamber members who sponsor the committee's effort to fulfill our mission. I think maybe a sponsorship slide should be showing. Our sponsors include Mercedes-Benz of Gilbert, Phoenix Children's Hospital, Meadows Bank, Schuster Print Marketing Services, the Lynch Team Conway Real Estate, Wisdom Natural Brands, 910 West, Edward Jones, Mallory Reese, IHC Specialty Benefits, and Meritum. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Farah Loki, a pediatrician at Phoenix Children's Hospital, to say a few words.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you see me? Let me start it up. Here we are.
There we go.
How are you?
Good, wonderful.
Good. My name, like you said, is Dr. Faraloki. I am happy to speak today on behalf of Phoenix Children's Hospital, as well as Phoenix Children's Pediatrics. I may know some of you, as I have spent a majority of my career in the East Valley, especially Gilbert, and have been part of the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce. And I owned my very own practice here for quite a few years in Gilbert. About a year and a half ago, I transitioned from my practice and joined a great organization called Phoenix Children's Pediatrics, and I'm here in a Gilbert office. We have about 38 providers here for all your children, and we're all over the East Valley. As the East Valley continued to grow, Phoenix Children's was a growing presence here in the East Valley. As pediatricians, we were all happy to see Phoenix Children's coming into the East Valley. And they now include a robust offering of inpatient, outpatient services, all close to home here in Gilbert. Today, Phoenix Children's has about 13 locations in the East Valley, providing local access to more than 20 subspecialties, which is great. A lot of times we have to send downtown for subspecialties, and we have a lot of great subspecialties here now. And we've provided pediatric inpatient services at Mercy Gilbert for many years, but we knew we had to do more for the people out and the children out in the East Valley to meet the pediatric needs. So Phoenix Children's partnered with Dignity Health to bring a dedicated state-of-the-art women's and children's pavilion to the East Valley, which is looking beautiful if you guys noticed it off the freeway. The building is very pretty and looks like it's getting there. It's opening in 2021 on the Mercy Gilbert campus, and it's going to be a 5-story Phoenix Children's Hospital East Valley. And it'll seamlessly integrate into the leading pediatric services at Dignity, as well as the maternity services there. And Phoenix Children's Hospital East Valley facilities will include pediatric emergency department, which is great. We've been waiting for that. And inpatient unit, surgical services, and imaging, and a level 3 NICU, which was awesome to have those little babies who need a little extra help. So thank you for letting us sponsor this event. Thank you for having us. And just want to tell everyone to stay safe and remember to protect yourself and others, and mask up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Loki.
You're
so
welcome.
very much appreciate you being here today, as well as the support from Phoenix Children's Hospital.
Thank you very much.
We also, again, just want to send our appreciation to Mercedes-Benz of Gilbert, as well as all of our other sponsors. This philanthropic webinar today, Women in Community, Come Celebrate with Us, is 1 week ahead of the town of Gilbert's 100-year anniversary celebration on July 6th. And today we will be featuring 3 outstanding and creative women of diverse backgrounds, unique stories, and entrepreneurial spirit and heart for our community. It is our honor as a committee to celebrate these women, their accomplishments, causes, and their spirit for the town of Gilbert and our surrounding communities. Our first speaker, Jessica Nicely, CEO and owner of Winged Hope, has been a passionate advocate for child abuse prevention, awareness, and treatment for the past 24 years. A survivor of child abuse, Jessica founded her own 501c3 Winged Hope Family Advocacy Foundation in 2013. Since then, Winged Hope has directly served or trained over 50,000 people around the state of Arizona. Winged Hope was the recipient of the Arizona Attorney General's 2018 Arizona Crime Victims' Rights Week Award for Service Coordination. Jessica has also been a spokesperson for Prevent Child Abuse America's Arizona chapter and is currently a speaker for the Arizona ACE, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Consortium. For 8 years, Jessica volunteered on an Arizona Foster Care Review Board, and she is a graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy. Jessica regularly serves as an expert on child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence and suicide, and panel discussions and trainings throughout the state of Arizona. A graduate of Arizona State University, Jessica is also a published author, and her memoir, All My Friends Are Zeros: My Secret to Overcoming Adverse Childhood Experiences, is available at all online booksellers. A former Miss Arizona USA, Jessica had the privilege of representing the state of Arizona at the Miss USA pageant. Jessica is the recipient of the Beth McDonald Women of the Year Award for 2019 and the Positive Paths East Valley Women of the Year for 2020. Jessica's greatest achievement is her family. She and her husband have one daughter and one son who share their home with 3 cats and a dog here in Arizona. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Christy. Thank you. Let's make sure everybody can.
Yeah, just a second. There we go.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. Welcome. Thank you, Christy. That's so kind. And thank you all so much for having me here today. So I'm so used to doing this in person. So imagine that I'm walking around the room and getting to see you all. And you know, I'm sad I don't get to see everybody. So that's my favorite part. And my favorite part is after I'm done speaking and talking to everybody. So I do hope you'll ask questions and I'll be able to hear from you all when I'm done speaking. So I was asked to speak today about the why of why I do what I do. And I often think about the why after speaking events when I'm feeling so much heaviness and sadness, not just from sharing my worst moments in life. I don't get paid to speak. I often have to sacrifice time with my children or something else that I'm doing to be there. And it's very seldom fun to relive all my worst pain. And yet I've done it time and time and time again. And since I started Winged Hope, my nonprofit that helps victims of violence like I once was, I reopened those wounds again and again and again to help others heal from their wounds. As Christy mentioned, we've helped or educated over 51,000 people in the state of Arizona, and we've given direct victim services to victims of violence, directly served almost 4,000 people in the state of Arizona, many of them here in Gilbert. So over and over, myself and my all-volunteer team, many of whom are also survivors of violence themselves, take on the heaviest of the heavy burdens for no purpose except to help heal others from their wounds and from the horrific violence that they've experienced. So I think about the why, and I think especially in times like now when we're all experiencing so much chaos and so much upheaval and changes. I hear the word pivot all the time lately. You know, we're all pivoting, we're all changing, and so I think about it. I think about, you know, when I started Winged Hope and what that looked like and what we've lived through and gone through in these times in our almost 8 years of being here and serving here based out of Gilbert. So I began sharing my past pain 24 years ago. And I shared about being a survivor of physical and emotional child abuse. And then 7 years ago, long before the Me Too movement, I decided it was time to share about the sexual abuse that I experienced. And that was something up until that point that I had only shared with a handful of people. And since my first speaking engagement, and literally every speaking engagement since, even the virtual ones, somebody will tell me their story. And very often I'm the first and only person who knows these stories of shame and sadness and pain that these victims have been holding on to for so long. I have literally lost track of the number of times someone said to me, "You're the first person I've told about this." And I've heard that profound statement that I do not take lightly from college-age women, women later in their lives, in their 50s, 60s, sometimes even 70s. Some adult men have shared that. More little girls than I can count, sadly, and some little boys too. And these brave survivors carried their pain for so many years until they heard me speak my story and remind them that there is no shame in sharing their past and that they have no responsibility in the horrors that occurred to them and that they should feel free to share that. And so it's an honor that I have valued and cherished since the first little boy. I think it's ironic that my first disclosure was from a little boy. And he said to me after my first time speaking, I'm a survivor too. So in my work in child abuse prevention, again, that started over 24 years ago with Prevent Child Abuse America, this is the story I shared. So I haven't had parents for over 22 years now. I have never called someone mom, which is a novelty in life that so many people take for granted. But when you never get to call someone by that name, it leaves quite a void. I didn't have parents at my college graduation. I didn't have parents the day I walked down the aisle. I didn't have parents the day my daughter was born. I didn't have parents the day my son was born. And I don't have two parents to love and spoil my beautiful children like grandparents are supposed to. You see, my birth mom left my family when I was just 8 months old. And so growing up, there were no stories about my birth or the first year of my life. I never knew what it was like to have a mom to fix my hair in the morning before school or talk to me about boys or the changes a young girl's body goes through. I've never known any of those simple yet profound moments that come with having a mother. But along the way, I gained a stepmom. She was first my nanny, and then my aunt, and then my stepmom for about 5 years of my life. It was a complicated relationship and a complicated childhood that I lived. So while I had a stepmom for several years, I still never got to know the simple comforts that come with having a real mom, and that I now know as a mama that we give our babies. A hug at the end of a hard day, or an encouraging word, that knowing look your mama gives you. I never knew any of those comforts. But here are some things that I did know growing up. I knew what opium smelled like because my daddy would have opium drug parties in our den while my sister and I were sequestered in our room until his friends all went home. I knew what it was like to come home from school and see my stepmom with rug burns on her face because my daddy had broken in and literally dragged her around our house. I knew what it was like to feel terrified in your own home, knowing that at any moment, for no reason at all, sometimes because you came in a room when he was feeling enraged, you could be shouted at, shoved, hit, or worse than all of that for me, ignored like you didn't exist at all for sometimes days at a time. I knew what it was like to come home and see the chain lock broken on the front door, which was my clue that my daddy had broken in again to beat up my stepmom. I knew how to shoot a gun because my daddy made us learn how in the basement when he would have target practice when he was feeling angry or frustrated, which was pretty much all the time. I knew what it was like to watch my daddy hit my stepmom with a closed fist, and I often stood between them to try to stop her from being hit. I knew what it was like to go to children of alcoholic groups in high school and sit in this small circle of people and share your deepest secrets and shame, and then minutes later having to pretend like you didn't know them at all when you walked the halls. And I knew what it was like to have my father succeed with his constant threat to end his life, and I learned to live with the stigma and guilt of being a survivor of suicide. So I have known sadness, I have known pain, I have known fear. But here's one other thing I knew. I always knew it would get better. I always knew if I just held on long enough, my life could be as happy as I decided to make it. And I knew that if I focused on all that I did want my life to be, and I focused on all that was good in my life, I could survive it all. And once I did grow up and leave that home, I did one other critical thing. I forgave. I forgave everyone for all of it, and I made peace with my past. I did that with the strength and love of and for God, and I feel without him it wouldn't have been possible. I do think it's important, though, to know that even though I forgave, that doesn't mean that I accepted all the acts that I suffered and witnessed. Now, fast forward to February 2019, when I was invited to be a speaker on a panel of survivors for Florence Crittenden, which is a home in Phoenix for young girls with trauma, many of whom grew up with pasts like mine and some far worse than mine. And it's still there serving women today and young girls. While there, I shared about my daddy's violence, anger, and the root of all that, which was his alcohol problem. And for some reason, I felt called that day to share about these incidents that happened in the shower. Incidents that I didn't even want to call sexual abuse for a long time, and I actually minimized it, which we as survivors do, and I called them sexually inappropriate moments or the shower incidents. I wanted to call it anything but sexual abuse, which is what it was. So when the speaking engagement ended, a young girl approached me and we had a poignant moment where she talked about how her daddy had killed himself. And so she couldn't say the word suicide. She couldn't say he died by suicide. And we talked for a little bit longer. And by the end of our conversation, she did say the word. And she said, my father died by suicide. And so it was such a poignant and healing moment for her. And I felt like I was definitely there for her. But I left wondering why I felt so called to share about the sexual abuse. So fast forward again to 2018, I was presenting at an event for Mojave County Courts. And just before the event, I was chatting with this really kind man who shared about how he worked with juveniles and juvenile probation. And he sat in the front row and listened to me share my story and then training the room on adverse childhood experiences. And when I finished, the line formed as it always does, and people started sharing their trauma and their past and disclosing to me. So the kind gentleman that sat in front was in line, and when it came his turn, he had tears in his eyes, and I felt sure he was going to share his own story with me. But instead, he said to me, "I've heard your story before." He said, as you started to talk about your father and how you didn't have a mother, you were Miss USA pageant, you were writing a book about your life, he said, I know this exact story. So he told me about this young girl who he had worked with, and she was struggling with some trauma she had gone through, and she had been sexually abused by her father. And she got into some trouble in Mojave County, and they actually sent her for a little while to stay at Florence Crittenden in Phoenix. She was there that day and heard that story. But I didn't know that until 5 years later, and he told me that when she came back to Mojave County and she told him about my speech and she told him about my life, she said that it just empowered her. It helped her to see that there was an end to all her pain, that it didn't have to end up the way that it does so often. And so she turned her life around, got it together. He told me that she moved to the East Coast to live with a grandmother. Again, it had been a few years, so at that point she was, I think, in her early 20s, and she was married. She had just had a baby, and so it gave me, it was just such a profound moment. Looking back, I wish I had asked him a million more questions, and I wish that I could have found her. But again, this man told me that sharing my story gave her hope and prompted her to change her life for the better. So that young girl, who I will likely never know, and I can't remember her name, is my why. She is why. And I could share literally hundreds and hundreds of stories similar to that, where people have shared the impact that my sharing has had on them. There are suicidal teens today who are still alive, and now college students thriving, and I have letters from their mamas thanking me for their children's lives, and they are my why. You know, these times in our country when everything's so tumultuous, and sadly, you know, the crimes that have been going on in our world are increasing during these times. They're not getting better. Before our world was in the state it's in right now, we already lost 5 children a day to child abuse. Every 44 minutes in the state of Arizona, a child is witnessing domestic violence. And like I said, these numbers are increasing because of the state that we're in right now. They're not decreasing. So my hope is that in sharing this story and in talking to you all today, that more people will use their voices to share their story, and not just use their voices, but also to act. Actions and serving this community takes constant sacrifice. And that truly is what we need to do, is not just speak about what's happening, but take action to be helping people. You know, using our voices is important, absolutely, but that's not enough. It's one step in about 1,000 steps on this healing journey that victims have. Last night was a Sunday night, but I was meeting with a victim who was fleeing a domestic violence situation with her children. And when I got back home from helping her, I got this text from her. She said, "Thank you so much for everything. I'm so glad I met you. I finally have hope." And that is why. That is why I do what I do. That is why I try my best to serve humbly. And I know that there are other people out there who need to hear not just my story, but other survivors' story. And it's my hope that in sharing today, it's encouraged somebody to share your story. And you don't have to do it in front of 50 strangers or 100 strangers, or, you know, you can just share it with your children. Share it with your loved ones. I know that there are some people holding on to stories they haven't even shared with their husbands. I'm encouraging you to share. It helps people understand you better when they know what you've walked through and what you've lived through. And so it's my hope and prayer that that in sharing today, it will encourage some of you to share your own stories. So this is my favorite part in person, where we get to see questions. And I know somebody said there was a question or comment. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, that's nice. Somebody said they appreciate my vulnerability in my opening. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? And again, I encourage you to ask any questions at all. My life, my story is literally an open book. So if there's a question that you have, please don't hesitate to ask. And I do want to say, and I should have said it at the beginning, that I'm sorry, this might have triggered some of you that have your own story and your own pain. And so if in fact it did make you think of your own story and your own pain, you may feel a little bit sad or even a little cranky today, and that's okay. And that's really normal. And if you want to talk about it, we're here. I think you all have my contact information. Call me, text me, send us a note, and I would love to talk it through with you and hopefully give you resources, because we believe healing is possible no matter how long ago the violence occurred. So thank you all again. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica. I know that you caught that comment that was shared. I appreciate the fact that you always are so willing to share those experiences. And I know that, or at least I believe that we can all become stronger when we spend time in that vulnerable space. And I know that each time that you speak and share your story and experiences, that's where you find yourself. And I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. And I do have, I think, a couple of comments or questions. So if anybody that's attending today does want to help more than maybe just listening to somebody or anything like that, does anything come to mind where they might be able to support you in what you're doing, or anybody else? Yeah, so I think, volunteering right now is a little weird because of the state we're in, with COVID, but we do still need volunteers. Like I said, we are still serving victims, so you can definitely reach out and ask about that. But there's other ways that people can serve, that aren't about Winged Hope too. I think just watching and paying attention when you can to your neighbors, because right now I think most of us are mostly just seeing our neighbors. Watch what's happening in your neighbors' families, because again, right now violence is escalating, and don't be afraid to make a phone call if you need to, if you see something happening with your neighbors or your families. And if you don't feel like you can do that, then you can call organizations like ours, and we will. So I know that it feels scary sometimes to get involved, but someone's counting on you to do that. And so again, if you feel like you can't, call us and we will. But I think just that, even just paying attention to what's happening around, because right now things are escalating and we can't be everywhere. So we need your eyes and your ears, and for you all to be watching and seeing what's happening. Thank you. I'll look through a couple more of these that have come through. Okay. I heard a woman recently say that we should give out of our overflow. How can we find small ways to contribute? So again, like I said, I think just paying attention. And I think, there are children that need desperately right now. There are so many children in foster care. There were before this happened, and there's going to be more after this is over. So helping in foster care in ways that you can. That doesn't mean you have to be a foster parent. You could sit on a foster care review board. That's a once a month commitment. It's really not that difficult. If someone's interested in that, I can help them and let them know how you can do that. So there are so many ways, and I do think that that's really a good question. It's hard to know how to volunteer. And I think a lot of times when you call nonprofits, we're so busy, actively helping victims, that sometimes when someone calls to volunteer, that's the call that gets pushed down the list. And so I'm sorry for that, first of all. And but secondly, don't give up. Keep trying. When you call an organization that you want to help and you don't hear it back, call again or email again. You're not bothering them. They need you to do that so you can rise back to the top of the list and they can get back to you. But yeah, there's absolutely still ways to help right now. We're having to be more creative about it, but we're definitely still able to serve and help victims. And there's ways that absolutely you all can. And if anybody wants to email me directly, they're welcome to do that.
Okay. And another question here too is if somebody close to you does disclose information about child abuse that they went through, how should they respond?
Okay, so that would depend on if it was a child still, or if that's an adult who experienced it as a child. So if it's a child that is still a child being abused, then that's something that you would need to report. So you can call us and we can walk you through it. You can call the Child Help Hotline, which is 1-800-4-a-child. And they have people there that will answer the phone and kind of walk you through whether or not you should call the police. So sometimes it is call the police. If that's someone who was abused as a child and is now an adult needing healing, then you can call us and we can help connect them to some good trauma-informed therapy. There's some amazing books that we have. On our website, we have these tip sheets, and they have just some tips, and then also some like other organizations, books that can help. So if you go to our website, you can look for the tip sheet for whatever violence occurred. So if that's child abuse, if that's domestic violence, those can help too. But absolutely, please feel free to reach out to us. But yeah, it would just depend on if that was still a child or an adult now.
Thank you. And then it looks like I'm going to ask one more here. How can you find friends who are a 0 on the ACE test?
I think that was just God helping me find my 0. So I don't know how to, so I know the ACE test so well that if I have a short conversation with you, I can figure out your score. And we do have that ACE tip sheet too on our website. It looks like this. And the questionnaire is on there. If you're going to take that today, I want to say again, be careful, because if you do have a score on the ACEs, those boxes you check are going to maybe trigger you. But yeah, I mean, you just, that was just God's grace that I ended up being surrounded by friends, and my husband is a 0. My best friend is an adult is a 0. And I have friends that aren't 0s. I have friends that are 9s like me. I'm a 9, and I have a friend that's a 10. And but I do think that growing up as a child, having those 0s helped me to see all that I wanted to make my life. And I think that was so important. And I think that if you are going through some kind of trauma right now, it's good to have friends that know trauma too, but it's also good to have friends who are not experiencing that, and they might just have a more stable effect on you when you're going through your trauma. I wish there was a magic answer to know who's a 0, but it's just knowing the test. So again, if you look at the test, it's just 10 questions. And then you just pay attention when people talk, you can know people's scores.
Okay. Well, Jessica, I want to thank you again for everything that you've shared. We absolutely celebrate you today and every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, let me see where we are at. Okay, so before we get to our next speaker, which is Kayla Kolar with HD South, we do have a few messages to share with all of you, so please watch and enjoy.
Many of our services already were provided online. So when COVID-19 hit in 2020, we reached out to all of our clients and all of the communities that we serve and did a needs assessment. Every service that we provided for our buyers and sellers now could be found online. We at the Amy Jones Group would love the opportunity to help you and your family. You can reach out to us by phone, email, or start browsing our website today.
Thanks for attending the event. My name is Dr. Black, and I'm with University, just here to help you with speaking, right? Excited in your career goals. If you would like information on how to school, and Dr. Black at gcu.edu or on my direct line 602-639-8719. Reach out to me. Thanks.
Hi, it's Jessica here at Delta Life Fitness. We are talking about women empowerment and getting through 2020. It couldn't be more important than it is now. Whether the nucleus of the family and taking care of each other in a positive fitness community is what we are passionate about. So come on down and try a class. We've got our 60 challenge going on, and I would be honored to help empower you through the rest of the year so that next year can be even better.
Took her to the emergency room where they finally did some CT scans, and they discovered multiple masses throughout Layton's abdomen, on her liver, and on her lung. The Phoenix Children's has just been fantastic. Every nurse, every child life specialist, the surgeons, even the people that work at the cafeteria. The next few months are still going to be pretty rough and tough for her, but I really do see her walking away from this, and this is just going to be a blip on the map that is her life.
Okay. So our next speaker, as I mentioned, is our wonderful Kayla Kolar with HD South. Kayla has been the president and CEO of HD South, home of the Gilbert Historical Museum, since May of 2005. The visibility of the organization in the community has grown exponentially, and they are currently in the middle of a $2 million capital campaign to expand programs and the facility. Prior to that, she was the executive director for the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure, the deputy director of the Desert Botanical Garden, and a division sales manager with the National Federation of Independent Business. While at the garden, she chaired the annual Luminaria event and was the lead project manager for a $17 million capital campaign and expansion. Kayla holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Illinois State University. She is a graduate of the Gilbert Leadership Class of 24, was on the Gilbert Leadership Board of Directors for 7 years, is a past president of the board, and is a recipient of the 2013 Gilbert Leadership Award. Previously, she has served on the boards for the Central Arizona Museum Association and the Museum Association of Arizona, was a national officer for Phi Beta Lambda, and is the past recipient of the Chandler Gilbert Community College Silver and Teal Award. She has been a volunteer for such organizations as United Way, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Future Business Leaders of America, and the March of Dimes. Kayla has lived in Arizona since 1991 and has 3 adult children. Alex is 28, Matthew is 25, and David is 22. She is a very enthusiastic resident of Gilbert. Welcome, Kayla.
Thanks, Christy. Wow, how can you follow Jessica? What an inspiring and amazing woman that you are, Jessica. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. That was just amazing. As for my why and why I do what I do, if there was ever a reason to preserve history, to preserve the stories of the past, 2020 is the year. I tell you, with everything that we're going through, with the pandemic, with dealing with all the unjust issues in the world, I mean, this is the year that shows exactly why we should not forget, why we should remember those stories and share those stories. And at HD South, we've been doing that for almost 40 years. The organization has been around since 1982. We have always had our history museum, but 4 years ago, we started doing public programs in 6 different areas: history, art, science, music, literature, and health and wellness. We have yoga every Thursday night at HD South on our corner. So if you're interested in that, come join us. But we do many, many programs that aren't offered anywhere else in the community. So today I want to focus on that history pillar that we do. And Christy had mentioned that this is the 100th birthday of Gilbert this year. And so I thought it was only fitting that we take a few minutes here and recognize some of the amazing women that have really made this community what it is today. So I have some pictures to show you here. So let me get that up. Okay, now I want you to maybe sit back and maybe close your eyes and imagine that it's 1862, a very long time ago. President Lincoln has just signed the Homestead Act into law, and that act said that anyone could have 160 acres of land for free if they lived on that land, they farmed it, they made improvements, maybe built a house. Or someone could actually file a homestead claim and actually pay cash outright, and they would pay $1.25 an acre. So that same year in 1862, a baby girl was born in New York. Her name was B. Bartow Halsey, and her father was the captain in the Civil War. Now, at some point in time, B moved across the country to Los Angeles, and she became a doctor. And by the time she was 30 years old, she had moved to Arizona to practice medicine. Now, we don't know how B came to be in Los Angeles or in Arizona, but here she was in the middle of Arizona, somewhere in the desert east of Phoenix, and she decided that she wanted to own some of this desert land. So on November 16th in 1891, B. Bartow Halsey was the first person to file a homestead patent for an entire section of land that was 640 acres in what we now know as Gilbert. She had the square mile that ran from Gilbert Road east to Lindsay and then from Elliott Road south to Warner. So that square mile is what she bought, and she paid $800 cash for that section. If only we could buy it for that today. She never lived on the land, though. She was kind of just a land speculator, but that was her stake that she put in the ground. And just think about that. In 1891, what an amazing thing for a 30-year-old female doctor to do. I kind of think of B as our own Dr. Quinn, the medicine woman from the TV show. We know that B did stay in Arizona, though, and she died in Winkleman, which is just south of Globe, in 1918 at the age of 56. Now, another interesting thing to note is that of the first 11 homestead patents that were filed in the Gilbert area between 1891 and 1898, 5 of those 11 were to women, and 4 of those women paid cash for the claim. None of them were from the area, so we can only assume that they were land speculators. But just imagine what independent, business-minded women they must have been to have done that back in the day. And that's just fascinating to me. Now, most of the women back at the turn of the century and for the first few decades in the 1900s were farmers' wives, and their lives really revolved around day-to-day survival. They all came from somewhere else, and they landed in Gilbert before it was even officially a town. So one example was Cora Burke. Now, Cora and her husband Amos, her first husband, moved to Gilbert from Iowa in 1912 when Cora was 41 years old. Now, in Iowa, Cora had been a teacher until she found out she was going to have her first child. But back in the day, you usually couldn't be a teacher after you got married, but Cora did teach for the first 4 years of her married life. She went to the normal school for teachers for 2 years, so that they considered her very well educated at the time. But like many farming families, Cora and Amos moved to Arizona for the water. Now in Iowa, they had a 10-room house and they had 80 acres of land. But when they got to Gilbert, they actually lived in a 1-room tent. And their farm was from Gilbert Road east to Burke Street and from Elliott Road north to Center, which was about a half mile. And they eventually built a house, which originally was on the northeast corner of Gilbert and Elliott. And that house actually stands today, and they moved it a little bit to the east, and it's that little yellow house across from the post office. So that's where Cora and Amos lived. Amos had 2 prize-winning Swiss bulls, and tragically, the first year they were in Gilbert, one of them killed him. They gored him and killed him, so that's kind of our tragic story there. But imagine being Cora. Here she was in a strange land. She had 2 kids, a bunch of cattle, and a farm. So she was really tied to this area now, and financially she couldn't go back home to Iowa. So she ended up marrying her neighbor, G.W. Lyons, a couple of years later, and that's the man shown in the picture here. But Cora wasn't just a farmer's wife. She taught Sunday school, and she was also the chairman of the American Red Cross during World War I. And she died in Gilbert in 1943, but many of her descendants are still in the area today. This kind of a hard life was really typical for farming wives back in the day, but most of them were civic-minded and they did give back to their community. Another great example of a woman from Gilbert's past is Mabel Murphy Russell. And she too came from Iowa in 1917, and she came to escape the cold winters. And she was the first full-time home economics teacher. And a year after she got here, she married C.H. Russell, and so they made her stop teaching in the school that was in the museum. She and Mr. Russell had 2 children, and once the kids were old enough, Mabel went back to teaching, and she taught 5 grades at one time of children in the Accommodation School for Negroes from 1926 to 1931. And this school was actually located in a house that was at the base of the water tower. And that house still stood until 2001 when it was finally torn down. But Mabel was paid $900 a year to teach there. Again, Mabel was not just a teacher. She was a tutor, she was a babysitter, a substitute teacher. She taught on the Navajo reservation, and she also taught Sunday school as well. And she retired when she was 70 years old. Her husband died in 1947, but Mabel lived another 20 years, and she died in Gilbert in 1967. The first woman that ever served on the Gilbert Town Council was Gladys Merrill. We don't have a photo of her, but she was on the town council in 1925. Her husband actually had been the 3rd mayor of Gilbert from 1921 to 23. Now, if I had to name a woman of the century for Gilbert, it would probably be Geneva Clay. Geneva and her husband Red came to Gilbert in 1931, and immediately they became very involved in the community. And they were movers and shakers in Gilbert for over 50 years. Geneva worked for the Gilbert Enterprise as a typesetter, and then she became a contributing writer, and they actually gave her her own column. Geneva was a huge advocate of the modern sewer system and a driving force in getting the roads paved in Gilbert in the late 50s. She was a businesswoman. She worked at the Gilbert Pharmacy from 1942 to 1958, and she opened the Gilbert Variety Store with her brother, and she ran that from 1958 until 1977. Geneva was on the town council twice, from 1955 to 1959, and then another 20 years later from 77 to 81. From 1961 to 1973, she was the chairwoman of the Gilbert Promotional Corporation, and they managed all of the Gilbert Days activities, including the parade. And she worked tirelessly for them after serving as a chair for 12 years. Geneva was the president of the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce, and she chaired many of their activities. And get this, she was involved with the Gilbert Chamber for over 56 years. That's longer than a lot of you have even been born. So Geneva was very active in the community. She was instrumental in helping Gilbert get that post office that's on Elliott Road. Previously, it had just been inside retail stores in downtown. She served 4 years on the board of the Gilbert Senior Center when it first opened. She raised money for the first Gilbert Library. She helped start the Gilbert Historical Society. She ran their thrift store. Geneva was just an amazing, dynamic woman. She was full of enthusiasm. And as you can imagine, she received almost every award that was established in this community. And in fact, at one point, APS even honored her with an award for outstanding contributions to humanity. So it's only fitting that she herself has an award named after her. And every year at the Chamber Excellence Awards, we give out the Geneva Clay Community Service Award to honor someone else for their outstanding community service. So Geneva passed away in 2001 at the age of 89, but I think you can see why I kind of call her the woman, the myth, the legend. That's our Geneva, and she did amazing things for this community. Our first female police officer was Diane Ellis. She was a Gilbert native. She worked as secretary for the police department, but in 1975, she went through a 17-week course and became the first woman reserve officer in Gilbert Police Department history. She graduated from the Maricopa County Police Reserve Academy in the top 10 of her class of 94 cadets. And then she became a full-time officer. She was only on the force for 2 years, and then she left to become a nurse. And she said it was very challenging because as a woman, she felt she was being tested all the time. And don't many of us, unfortunately, still feel that way today sometimes. But she did enjoy working for her community and with all the people that she grew up with. Gilbert's first mayor was Joe Albright. She was an operating room nurse, and she also worked in an electronics business that she and her husband owned, and then she was elected in June of 1991. Jo was an amazing woman. She served for just under a year is all, but she accomplished some amazing things during that time. She started the first municipal fire department in Gilbert during her tenure. She brought responsibility, accountability, and transparency to the way that Gilbert did business. And at the time, the citizens had voted to actually take over APS and create their own utility company for the town. And when it came time for the final vote of the council, Joe was the deciding vote to not go through with the takeover. And over time, this of course has proved to be the wisest decision. But there was so much political turmoil going on in Gilbert at the time that Joe resigned. And that's why she only served for just under a year. Gilbert has grown so fast that there are very few structures left that you could really consider historic in town. Of course, there's the museum. That's the oldest building still standing, and it's the only one on the National Register of Historic Places. There are some original buildings in downtown Gilbert, a few houses here and there. But a woman who led the most preservation efforts in Gilbert was Ruth Giesel. Ruth was also a farmer's wife. She was a leading force in the Historical Society for many years. And her family farm, interestingly enough, was east of Gilbert Road, about a half mile south of Elliott. So they owned some of the land that was originally owned by B. Bartow Halsey, so that original homesteader. Ruth is responsible for what is now known as the Farmhouse Village. So if you think on the east side of Gilbert Road, about a half mile south of Elliott, there's a big yellow homestead house that was recently, well, it was built a few years ago. And then the Gilbert House restaurant is right there. And then it's surrounded by all those little homes. Ruth actually saved those homes. She actually moved them all there and created that little village. And then she leased them out to small businesses. So the Gilbert House restaurant is actually a home that was purchased out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog and then brought to Gilbert and constructed. Ruth is also known for somewhat being a rabble rouser in town. She was very patriotic. She believed in encouraging people to vote. She started a group called the Gilbert Voters in Action. You would often find her at a town council meeting speaking her mind. And they asked her to run for council several times, but she believed that she could do more from the sidelines. And she was on the committee that planned the beginnings of the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport. Among many other things in the community. But Ruth passed away in 2014 at the age of 90. Then we have Jerry Johnson Emmett. She was the granddaughter of Amos and Cora Burke that I mentioned earlier. And Jerry was the daughter of Winnie and Mick Johnson. And Winnie, Jerry's mom, was the first female postmistress in Gilbert. Jerry moved to Gilbert in 1919, graduated from Gilbert High in 1932. She went to Arizona State Teachers College, which is now ASU, and she got a degree in education. She taught on the Navajo Reservation. She taught in the Creighton School District for 30 years. Jerry was born in 1914, before women had the right to vote, but she remembers her mother voting for the first time in Arizona. And she said that everyone stood around after her mom voted and saying, "Happy days are here again." So it was definitely something to celebrate back in the day. Jerry was very involved in the Arizona Democratic Party. And you might remember that at the 2016 Democratic National Convention, when the state of Arizona announced their votes, there was this spunky little white-haired lady. She was 102, and she cast Arizona's votes for Hillary Clinton. She became an instant media sensation. Reporters from all over the world were clamoring after her to get an interview, and she just really ate it up. She loved that kind of attention. But Jerry passed away from old age in April of last year, just 3 months shy of her 105th birthday. And there's kind of a pattern here. A lot of these women, even though their lives were very difficult, they lived forever. So I'm not sure what that says, but we were glad to have them around for a long time. A little more current, of course, we have our own Janine Ford. She graduated from Gilbert High School in 1977. She was the Fiesta Bowl queen in '78, and she became the first runner-up in the Miss USA pageant in 1980. But the winner that year was Shawn Weatherly, and she went on to become Miss Universe. So Janine assumed the role of Miss USA right here from Gilbert, Arizona. She was a Channel 12 news personality from '91 to 2007. She's been an actress, a business owner, a media consultant, and she's still in the area, and you will still see her on TV from time to time. And of course, our own Lindsay Sterling. She graduated from Mesquite High School in 2004. She's a world-renowned and award-winning violinist, songwriter, dancer. She won America's Junior Miss competition, quarterfinalist on America's Got Talent, came in second on season 25 of Dancing with the Stars, and she's just an amazing talent. And we're glad that she's from Gilbert. But I could go on and on with women in Gilbert, and especially over the last 20 years, but I purposely chose to stop at this point with my timeline because I would surely forget someone. Many of you could be on this slideshow right here with the amazing contributions that you're giving to our community. And I hope that you can see that since the beginning of time of Gilbert anyway, and even before Gilbert became a town, we have had many women that have been strong leaders who have really made a difference in making this community what it is today. And if I could leave you with anything today, it would be to really encourage you to continue mentoring young women and show them examples of what community service can be, because that's what makes a community of excellence. So I don't know if you have any questions. I'll stop sharing the screen here. But a little taste of history and the women in our community.
Oh, thank you so much, Kayla. I can only imagine how fun that was to put together, and I'm sure a lot of time and effort as well, but so very much appreciate you sharing some of those highlights from our history as we celebrate 100 years here in Gilbert. I do have a couple of questions, but first, just what my takeaway from what you shared was it's just another reminder that where we stand today, we are standing on the shoulders of all those women that came before us and the work that they did. And some of the words that kind of popped into my head was, you know, they did and focused on what they were passionate about and what their interests were and the impact they made in our community, as well as everyone that encountered them as well. So that's what stood out for me. But a couple of questions for you. So what would be one of your fondest memories of Gilbert?
Oh my goodness. I think one thing that I really appreciate about Gilbert, and it's more the spirit of Gilbert and how we celebrate everything. I've been with HD South for 15 years now, and even in that short period of time, we had our 90th birthday 10 years ago, and we celebrated in big ways. We've had a big music and art festival. We brought a historic locomotive to town, steam locomotive to town. Over 5,000 people showed up in downtown Gilbert to celebrate that. When we opened the parking garage, we had a party. I mean, we celebrate everything. When the last piece of farmland was sold, it was at Recker and Elliott, and the Morrisons owned it. We had a party to celebrate the sale of the last square mile of farmland. And that was kind of a bittersweet moment. But it's just that spirit of community that we have in Gilbert that I think I appreciate the most.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then also with all the activity going on at the museum right now, how can the women on this call and what we're involved with, how can we help support the capital campaign or even just help continue to support preserving the history?
Great question. First, for the capital campaign, we have raised about almost 1.4 million of the 2 million that we need to break ground. We did launch the public phase of the campaign where we would involve the entire community, and we did that on February 29th at our Night at the Museum event that we have every year. And then, of course, the world stopped around us. So we are still selling bricks for our courtyard. And maybe the Women Empowered group might want to have a brick, or individual businesses might want to have a brick, and you can find all of that information at hdsouth.org. For the history piece, we are actively collecting especially photographs from the town from 1940 until about the year 2000. So for those of you that may have been around for a long time, maybe even up to 2010, history is happening so fast that we can't keep up. And from 1940 until 1990, that's what I kind of call the missing years, because not much happened until the growth started happening. So we need photographs and stories from people that lived during that time to help us continue to fill in the gaps so that 50 years from now, we will have that record and we can still be telling those stories. So if you have any, stories or photographs from any of these celebrations I mentioned, or anything especially around town, anything to do with the growth, and you'd be willing to share those with us, please get in touch and let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that 50 years from now and even beyond, what we share today and what has been shared before us will be looked at, it will be looked upon, and I can speak from personal experience on that. So certainly encourage everybody to share what they can. And then also just wanted to ask, I know that there's a lot of stuff going on there. What changes to your hours? Will there be changes to classes, or what can we expect in the months to come?
Sure. We've been opened in the month of June because we extended our quilt show, and we also opened a new exhibit in our art gallery. And it's the most amazing exhibit. It's on penguins and Antarctica. So you actually walk in the room and it feels like you're in a cool place when it's so hot outside. But we are closing for the month of July. We've got some pre-scheduled construction that we had already planned. Has nothing to do with the capital campaign on the inside. So we will be closed for the month of July, reopening in August, and then our public programs will start again in September. Again, assuming everything in the world calms down a little bit, and we'll play it by ear, but that's our plan at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, again, Kayla, thank you so much for putting together that information and for sharing that with us today. And we also celebrate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will also just take a couple of minutes to hear from a few more messages before we get to our next speaker, which is Roushan Christofellis. So enjoy the next couple of minutes.
There's more to logistics than moving from point A to point B. There's your reputation. With over 20 years of industry experience, we understand your need for the best service at the best price. We are more than a business partner. We are a community partner. At Great Freight, we believe in giving back to the community that has helped us grow. Together, our great people and great service make us Great Freight.
Good afternoon, ladies. My name is Alice Woodard, and I'm the owner of Printworks for all your print promotional needs. I'm enjoying some time in my backyard and spending a lot of time in the backyard, enjoying the beautiful scenery and just relaxing. I hope you guys have been getting some relaxing time in for yourselves. And I hope the next time you think of printing, you think of me, Alice Woodard with Printworks, for all your print and promo needs from A to Z. Charlie, let's take a moment to thank all healthcare workers and first responders who helped the Valley during these trying times. Thank you. Let's also show our appreciation to the great people of Phoenix who continue to support us by offering a retail therapy sale.
Great idea. That's why you're my better half. Mercedes-Benz of Gilbert is having a huge sale. We're offering the largest selection of pre-owned Mercedes-Benzes in the Valley at rock bottom prices.
Visit the giant Mercedes-Benz of Gilbert.
And tell them Audrey sent you.
Is a very energetic, very active, very caring little girl. She'd been a totally normal, active kid, going to her hockey games, going to her baseball games. She just started having some stomach issues. So we took her to the emergency room where they finally did some CT scans, and they discovered multiple masses throughout Layton's abdomen, on her liver and on her lung. The Phoenix Children's has just been fantastic. Every nurse, every child life specialist, the surgeons, even the people that work at the cafeteria. The next few months are still going to be pretty rough and tough for her, but I really do see her walking away from this, and this is just going to be a blip on the map that is her life.
Okay, sorry about that. Our final speaker today is Roushan Christofellis. Roushan is the co-founder of Salad & Go, a drive-through with the mission to make organic food affordable, not for the few, but for everyone. Roushan and her husband, Tony, opened their first location in Gilbert in February of 2013 and just opened their 20th location, with many more coming. The company has evolved in its mission, purpose, and impact in the community. In 2018, they launched a lower price initiative and worked with the community on increasing efficiencies while decreasing waste. In 18 months, Salad & Go lowered the price of all salads with chicken or organic tofu from $7.18 to $5.74. Made from their organic cold brew iced coffee and drinks, $1, and all breakfast burritos just $2.99, all while increasing organics and giving raises to team members on the front lines. Most recently, as the coronavirus has deeply impacted the community, Salad & Go has partnered with local food banks and crisis centers, providing about 5,000 salads each week to those in need. Prior to starting Salad & Go, Roushan taught elementary school in the Kyrene School District for 7 years. She holds a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Arizona State University. When not running between stores or working closely with the team, Roushan is a busy mom of 2. Welcome, Roushan.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gilbert Chamber of Commerce, for inviting me to this incredible opportunity to celebrate women, women who are empowering other women and doing such incredible things in their communities. Thank you, Kayla, for what you're doing to preserve the history and the legacy of women who came before us, and like you so eloquently said, Christy, that we are able to do what we're able to do and stand on the shoulders of these brave women. And Jessica, thank you. That was really moving and incredible, and you give me hope that despite, you know, the things that we know are going on in our community, that there's people like you that are working behind the scenes, and that there's hope for humanity with people like all of you that are just doing amazing things. And so thank you. But yes, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, guys. I'm going to share my screen here and just talk a little bit more about some of the things we are doing. Sorry, a second. Okay, I'm going to use a PowerPoint just so I don't leave anything off, but feel free to, I tend to talk fast, so feel free to let me know if I need to slow down or anything. So just a little backstory. It started with a question. My husband and I, we met, well, actually working at the Olive Garden, but we were both going to ASCO at the time, and it was in my 7th year of teaching that we really started. His mom had just had her second heart attack by the age of 55, and my dad had just had stents put in, and we were kind of at that age where we were starting to realize how important our health is and how we really needed to be proactive before we were in situations where our kids were one day having to worry about us. So we started, you know, trying to eat healthy and finding it actually quite difficult to do. And so we just kept saying, you know, why can't we just get something healthy and great tasting through a drive-through? Like, I want to be able to just swing through a drive-through and get something and not feel guilty, but have that same convenience and affordability. So, you know, to kind of put it quickly, we started working on the business plan and thinking about the business model that would allow us to disproportionately invest into food. So organic food and perishable food tends to be more expensive. And so how can we not pass those costs on to our guests, but rather absorb them in other ways? So we started working on that. We had to find a chef because I don't cook. I would like to say I do, but I don't cook. And so we had to find a chef that could make salads craveable, which we, thank goodness, were able to find Chef Patino, who has an amazing fine dining background and was able to do that for us and continues to do that for us. I cashed out my teaching retirement. We started working on a website for as cheap as we could. And then we had to go find funding for trying to sell the idea that we wanted to open up a 656 square foot box that only serves salads through a drive-through with no interior seating in Arizona. So someone believed in us, and thank goodness they did, because we're here today because of that. So then at that point, I had to leave teaching. and say goodbye to that amazing experience. But just, you know, everything I think happens for a reason, because I was able to take so much from teaching over to the starting of Sal and Go. I went and got a job actually in between leaving teaching and before the store opened. I went and got a job in fast food so that I could learn a little bit about drive-through. So that took us to opening our first location on February 28th, 2013 in Gilbert and Guadalupe, in Gilbert and Guadalupe. People ask, why did you open your first one in Gilbert? My husband and I were living in Gilbert. We lived right down the street, and we knew we were going to be pretty much sleeping there, which we did just about. And so being down the street from a startup is really important because you will be there a lot and you need to get there quickly at times. So that was our first location. We started with a mission to make drive-through fast food better and healthier. Again, we talked about how do we do that. The premise was, the idea was to disproportionately invest into food, not the building, not a fancy, you know, building storefront, not fancy marketing. We really relied on social media and Facebook to get us started. And we truly believe that if we can make organic, great tasting food, it's just as convenient and affordable as traditional drive-through fast food, that food is medicine, and we can ultimately help change the health of America. We started growing the next year in 2014. We opened our second store also in Gilbert on Cooper and Warner. And then we had our third store open on Higley and Williamsfield. And it was going from store 2 to about to open store number 3 that we started to see that we had some opportunities with food production and distribution, as we had at the time prep for all of our, you know, cutting romaine and making our dressings and cooking our meats done at every location. And we started to see that there was opportunities to centralize that and then to distribute our own to our stores every day. And so we opened up our first distribution center, which at the time we opened the first one in Gilbert, and really started to focus on those operational efficiencies. The more efficient we became, the more we were able to take those efficiencies and roll them back into reinvesting in our food and people. Our goal, and even to this day, we don't make a profit. We believe that if we're making a profit, we're actually doing something wrong right now, because there's too much good to still do. And so we continued to manage the business so that we could continue to invest back in our food and people. And that kind of inspired us to take that even to the next level. And in July 2018, we had just opened our 12th location on Scottsdale and Oak, and we kind of started toying with the idea of, could we go lower? Could we lower our prices? And then the impact that we could have. You know, we were hearing amazing, beautiful stories of people coming through and talking about, you know, how they've been able to substitute traditional drive-through fast food, and people sharing their weight loss stories. And, you know, we'd have the mom come through and say that she was going through chemo, and the only thing that could, you know, get her through was, you know, just having a salad. You know, she needed to be eating organic, and she didn't have the energy or strength to cook. And so you hear these amazing stories of how food can actually really help people. But we started to see that we could potentially, we're still missing out on a lot of people that still can't afford that price point. And so we talked about if we could lower our prices, because even though our salads were $5.74, it was still extra to add on chicken or organic tofu. And so our goal was, we wanted to be able to make basically all of our salads include chicken or organic tofu for that $5.74 price point. So what would the impacts be? We'd be able to, first of all, provide that alternative to a group that couldn't currently afford it, and also remove that stigma and that notion that organic is a luxury and that eating healthy costs more and it's expensive and it's inconvenient. And we really wanted to make it for everyone, not just the few that can afford it, and kind of remove that idea of, you know, these $13 salads that you hear about. But we knew that we couldn't do it alone, and that was pretty ambitious. And so we took to the community. The community from day one has gotten us to where we are. Again, like I said, we have gotten where we are with more or less social media and the community rallying and sharing and spreading the word. And so we have always had transparency on Facebook. We've always talked about the whys of why we do things and why we sometimes, you know, have to remove a menu item or the things that we do, but involving the community and having that transparency. And so we let them in and we said, we have this goal. We want to lower the price of all of our salads. And we want to do this while reinvesting back into our food for more organic and higher wages. And so we asked our Facebook community and we said, you know, what isn't important to you? What could you do without? How can we be more efficient? How can we save money? And so they spoke, I mean, comments, so many amazing ideas. People started saying, well, gosh, you know, you give me a fork every time I come through and I'm just going home, and, you know, they're sending pictures of their drawer full of orange forks. And people are saying, you know, you always give me a bag for my salad, and, you know, I'm putting it in my car seat and then I'm going right into my house or into my office. I don't really need a bag. All these amazing ideas. Why don't you remove your branding from your bags? You know, take a look at your low selling menu items, you know, talking about automating processes, all these things. And we move fast. And so some of these changes we sent a message out to all of our teams. We're like, starting tomorrow, we're asking guests if they need a fork. And not to mention the impact of being able to cut plastic usage down by about 50%, the costs associated with packaging. I mean, these are things, they add up, and all of these ideas really helped us get to where we were. So over 18 months, we were able to achieve our goal and some. So we were able to lower the price of organic cold brew iced coffee from $2.39 to $1. We lowered the price of our house-made lemonades and organic iced teas to $1. We took all of our breakfast burritos down to $2.99, making it so that someone could get a healthy breakfast on the go for $3.99 with their coffee or drink. And then we incrementally lowered the price of all our salads. Ultimately, by January 2nd, 2020, we got all of our salads down from $7.18 to $5.74 with chicken or organic tofu, which was huge. It was a community effort. And it just really shows that when people come together, what people are able to achieve and do. We were able to also do this while giving out 3 different 5% raises over those same 18 months to all of our team members. We rolled out a monthly bonus program, and we also increased the number of organic ingredients, as well as organic romaine, which is a big one, to be able to start growing organic romaine here with a local farmer. And we never sacrificed our portion sizes since day one. Continuing to grow and watching team members go from hourly to salary at a record pace. It's really incredible to watch people make this their career and be able to support their family. And one of our team members, Angie, she started at store number 2. She's now on our Phoenix operations team, and she just bought herself her first Tesla. Like, it's just amazing to see someone go from hourly team member to having that passion and being able to work really hard and to say, I want to be a part of this. And we say we didn't give anyone anything. Everyone on our team has earned everything that they make. They've earned it. They've worked their bottoms off for it, and they're able to do amazing things. And it's because of them that we're able to grow together, and all of us can achieve this incredible mission. So 3 months later, we had just, you know, made our goal of the lower price initiative, and then the pandemic kind of started in. So COVID-19 started to impact our community. It felt like very quickly. Our culture, we have a culture team. Our culture at Talango is just as important as our operations. So we have a culture team who's dedicated to hiring and creating those environments that I talk about, teaching, how it kind of transferred over in. You know, when I was a teacher, my goal was for my classroom, for the kids to come in to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel heard, it's okay to make mistakes, to support one another, but to also, you know, come in, know the expectation, to feel that they're in a position to succeed because they know what they need to do. And it was those same ideas, right? How can we create that inside the walls of our under 700 square foot box at each of our stores? Because you really end up having these little mini environments where people really need to support each other and rely on each other if they're gonna make it through the day. And so part of our culture in that is, if you're in a position to help, you help. We say, if someone comes up to the window and is hungry or thirsty, we feed them. And so in this situation, we saw what was happening in our community, and we talked about, if we're in a position to help, how can we help? We were one of the fortunate businesses that our model was already set up for takeout drive-through. So besides having to roll in our kiosks, which we rolled those in just because of people touching them and congregating, we rolled in our kiosks and did just, you know, really focus on the drive-through piece of it. But we were in a very fortunate spot to be able to continue our business and not have to really, have to redo our whole model. And so because of that, we were able to quickly implement things like, okay, how can we continue to serve our community and provide healthy food to the community, but keep our team members safe and our guests safe. So food safety is always top priority, but some things we implemented, making sure they sanitize their hands after every transaction, sanitizing the surfaces constantly. And then we wanted to get masks to our team members, but it was at a time where masks were really needing to be dedicated to the healthcare community. And so we pulled in team members and we made our own masks at our distribution center. So we made over 500 masks in 2 days. And we're able to give one to every team member and some extras if they needed to give them to their family. And then we wanted to give back, and so we started giving out free salads and breakfast burritos to healthcare workers and first responders, and we did that for about 2 to 3 weeks every day. If you were a healthcare worker or first responder, you just had to come through and show your ID, and we gave you a free salad or breakfast burrito. But then after about 2-3 weeks, we started to see that our healthcare workers and first responders were on the front lines doing so much, but there was also just so many people impacted, losing jobs, and everyone's life had to adjust. And so we started dedicating a day to a different group, just to, again, let them know that we're here for you, we're gonna get through this, and just to kind of hopefully be a bright spot for someone who maybe really just needed to feed their family. So, we did grocery store workers, warehouse manufacturing workers, delivery drivers, all different farmers, and continue to do first responders and healthcare workers. After giving away, we did that for quite a while, for a couple months, and after giving away about $250,000 in free salads and breakfast burritos, we were again honest with our community, and we were starting to hear and see that the food banks and crisis centers and shelters were in a really tough spot. You had as Jessica even mentioned, right, it was really hard for volunteers, and these organizations rely so heavily on volunteers, and now you had volunteers who were sheltering in place who couldn't volunteer. And then you had these organizations who usually relied so heavily on grocery stores and restaurants giving their excess food, but there was none of that going on. And so and the need was higher than had ever been before. And so we told our Facebook fans, like, we love being able to give away this free food, but we really need to shift our resources and really go where the need is most critical. And so we went to the community again, we went to our Facebook fans and we said, this is what we want to do. Can you help us come up with, talk to us about some of these organizations in our community and the ones that you think that we could help. And we got over 50 suggestions, and our culture team, we called every single one, and some of them just at the time weren't able to take the salad. What we wanted to provide was we wanted to provide them salads, and the ones that were able to take and help distribute salads, we were able to partner with. And what was really cool is while all of this was going on, guests were also saying, how can I help? How can I help? What can I do? Can I donate? And we said, well, we don't want you to donate to us. Like this is something that we are in a position to do and we want to do, but you can still help and you can still donate. And so we quickly worked with our IT team. We're like, we need to link up so that people want to help, and we need to take this momentum and people's giving hearts right now and just wanting to help where they can. And so we put a link up, and it started with a link on our website and our app and online ordering and through the drive-through where you could donate to UMOM and St. Mary's Food Bank. In 2.5 months, the community funds payments directly straight to them, split between those two organizations. We raised $73,000, which is amazing. It's just a check right to them, and they needed that so badly. For June and July, we have shifted over to the AIRS Foundation and Live and Learn, another two great organizations, and every 2 months we will be working with new organizations for our guests to donate to. And as we continue to do our salad donation program, getting the ingredients from our distribution center directly over to these organizations. And you can see a picture here. So we get their truck or our truck, and we get huge containers of ingredients over to St. Mary's Food Bank of these crisis centers, or Waste Not. And we've been able to, in 12 weeks, we've donated over 57,000 salads to 14 different organizations across the Valley, which is a little over, we're on pace to do a little over 5,000 salads every week. It's really cool. Here's a picture of the Army National Guard who was being led by our culture team. So our culture team goes into these organizations and we put together like a training video for these organizations to know how to build our salads, because we don't want to give all these ingredients and then they can't make the right amount of salads that we promise them, and we want them to have the same salad experience that you would get at our drive-through. And so our culture team goes and leads them and shows them how to build all these salads. And here was the Army National Guard, like I said, helping to assemble those salads as well. And it's just, this picture is just so amazing to me, because it really just shows so many parts of the community coming together to help. And we, in doing this, decided that this is really something that the community needs and that we can continue to help with. And this is not going to end when the crisis ends. This isn't a COVID-19 thing. This is what we want to do our part, because even when this is over, the food crisis doesn't end for so many. So we will continue to partner with local organizations and continue to provide over 5,000 salads every week. We'll continue to have our culture team go in and train and work side by side with the volunteers and show them how to make these salads so that they can get that out in the hands of the community of those that couldn't otherwise have access to it and have that same experience that they could if they came through our drive-through. And then we just announced, you know, when all this started happening, we gave our team members a 10%, everyone who was working in the stores or distribution center, a 10% raise for crisis pay or hazard pay, as you call it. Those that were pregnant or at risk, we put them on a paid leave just to keep them safe. But how do you take that away from someone when the crisis is over, who's used to making that and who deserves that? And the truth is, our team members are the ones who are every day working so hard in the stores. There's a picture of our team members. They really are hustling, and they deserve this, and they deserve so much more. And so actually today's the day, effective today, our new starting wage is $15 an hour for all team members, and anyone making more than $15 an hour is basically keeping that crisis pay and some. It ends up being about 15% raise for everyone on the front lines of this organization. And we tell them all the time, they deserve it, they deserve more, and we'll get there. We'll continue to think outside the box and to find operational efficiencies and to give back to them, to reinvest into our food and our people, because there's still so much work to do. So the why we chose to focus our resources and our energies and be a for good company. We know that there's still so much to do out there, and at the end of the day, we want to be judged by how much good we were able to do in the community and the impact that we were able to have on our team members and their ability to provide for their families and to make a career. And for those that couldn't afford access and have healthy food for their families to have that. It's not about making a profit at the end. It's about what can you give back and what can you do for the community. So that's our why. That's what our team members work so hard for every day. And they know that that's the mission that we all have. And it's what pushes us to be better every day.
Okay. Roushan, your passion is just exuding from those minutes that you just shared with us. And I thank you so very much for sharing your story with all of us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I do have a few comments as well as questions to run by you. So I'm just going to start with some of the comments that came through here. So let's see. Amazing. So proud to be an AZ native and to hear about things like this happening in our state. Thank you for all your team does. This is amazing. What a wonderful business. And such a great example of profit, philanthropy, and fair pay. Absolutely, so.
Such a community effort. And I think it's so cool that everything that we've been able to do hasn't been done without our team members in our community. It's pretty cool when people come together, what can be accomplished. So
Absolutely. And that kind of touches on a couple of questions here as well. So speaking about culture, is there something that stands out for you that has helped you build that culture?
You know, I think my husband and I talk about how our parents were really selfless and did so much to put us in a position to do what we were able to do. My husband's mom was a Greek immigrant. She was a single mom and she worked really hard to put her 2 kids through college and to give them a better life. My dad was actually immigrated from Iran. And my mom, we both come from parents who really did everything they could. And I think we kind of take that same kind of servant leadership and that idea and we use it and try to instill it in the leaders of our company and to help them understand that it's not about the I or the me, it's about raising up those people, right, to be better leaders than you, to do more, to do better than we could ever do, because they're going to be the leaders that are going to go on to grow other leaders, and we're not going to be here forever to able to do this, and we need that culture and that servant leadership to continue to thrive, and that's the logic that's going to help continue to make it so that we can do these things, right? So I think that's a catalyst for our inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question is, what might be one of your largest hurdles that you've had to overcome as a business owner?
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's so many. I think it's making hard decisions is hard. And so there are things that we've had to do that we know aren't always well perceived. Like for example, when we removed the walk-up window, we used to have someone who stood there and took orders at a walk-up window, and we saw this as an opportunity to, it was someone just taking orders, and we're like, if we could just automate, that's one of the process, if we could just, have those kiosks where if the guest wanted to walk up instead of, drive or whatever, they could enter their own order, that efficiency savings can help us make it affordable to so many people. And so sometimes it's making those hard decisions that is going to impact someone, but trying to look at it for the greater good. And I think that's why, actually social media has been so great for us, because we're able to almost treat social media like a blog, and have that transparency and really help our guests know, here's what we're doing, and here's why it's so important that we can, all kind of sacrifice in this little way, so that we can achieve something that we think is really powerful for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. I have another one here. Amazing journey with your business. Thank you for lowering your prices so everyone can afford it. And the question is, what age do you hire at? The individual has a 15-and-a-half-year-old wanting to get a job and can't find anything until she turns 16. And I've got a 16-year-old, so I'm also interested here too.
It is 16. Our age is 16. Yeah. But so 15 and a half, so close. Don't forget about us. We have lots of more locations coming, so hang in there. But
good.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of locations, what if you can share some upcoming locations?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Okay, so we are supposed to open Roll Broadway tomorrow. Fingers crossed, as long as everything goes well. That's our plan for tomorrow. And then we have, after Roll Broadway, we have Cave Creek and Dunlap. And then we have Elliott and Priest, literally like 1 week apart, these next 3 weeks. And then we have a little lull. And in August, we've got Indian School on 32nd Street. We've got Elliott McClintock in the works. We will have about 8 more before the end of the year.
Okay. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been amazing. I'm so glad I got to be a part of this and to hear so many amazing women speak. So thank you.
You bet, absolutely. And I do have a final question here. Any plans to move outside of Arizona?
Yes, we do have plans. We haven't announced it yet, but we are working on our first out-of-state market. So we'll continue to grow Arizona. There's still other communities like Tucson and Maricopa, and so we're going to continue to grow Arizona, and then we are looking at an out-of-state market as well.
Wonderful. Well, so very exciting, and thank you so much for being here with us today, and we celebrate you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I celebrate you.
Okay, let's see. So I get to move into some final comments, as well as just a couple of other things that I want to announce. So just wanted to, let's see, just again, I want to thank Jessica, Kayla, and Roushan for sharing your stories with us today, and making an impact on all of our lives. And I wanted to share just a few takeaways that I jotted down, or was able to jot down, which I know that there were so many takeaways and ideas and thoughts that you all shared. So I hope that everyone had a chance to write down their own thoughts as well. But a takeaway that I had from Jessica, and I know this crossed over into some of the others, is what's your why? So encourage all of you to think about what's your why. And from Kayla is just to remember to continue to preserve our present history, because there will be women and people that will come after us and that will follow us and will be looking to the legacy that we've left. So just continue to preserve your history today and in the future. And from Roushan, overwhelmingly, was the idea of involving your community, whether that's your employees, your customers, the community at large, whatever that might look like, but definitely involving your community in your decisions, in your growth, in your plan, whatever that might look like. So those were some of my takeaways. And I did want to also say thank you to the Women Empowered Committee for all the hard work that they have put in these past several months, as well as more recently in helping us get here today. Appreciate all of your efforts so very much. And then also just wanted to let you know, be on the lookout for information in the next couple of months about some upcoming events that we'll have as well. So just wanted to touch on those things. And then I get to talk about a couple of exciting things in regards to, if you all have seen, or if you haven't, we've had an online auction on Facebook for the last week, and you still have time to support our programming and continue to celebrate with us. You'll find the auction by searching Women Empowered Auction. So definitely check that out on Facebook. We will leave that auction open until about 1:30 today. And there's details on there, so take a look at the photos and the remaining baskets that we've got available. And on behalf of the Women Empowered Committee and our sponsors, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And we have two final pieces of business before we close. Let's see. The first one is following the program here. If you go to that auction on Facebook, you will see a mega basket. I can't believe what was put together for this mega basket, but it is valued at $900. There is $250 in printing, $150 headshot session, a large format print, gift cards to restaurants, and so much more. So you will have until 2 o'clock on the mega basket to place your bids, and then the bidding will close. We will contact the highest bidders to take care of those details as well. So just encourage you all to check out that Facebook auction. It does support our efforts with the Chamber and what we're doing. So I appreciate you taking a look at that and helping as well. And then finally, we are drawing for the winner of the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce Wall of 100. And I just need to get to some information here. Let's see. So this was a fundraiser for the Gilbert Chamber that we've been working on for the last 2 weeks since our annual awards luncheon. And the winner drawn will receive 4 one-way or 2 round-trip Southwest airline tickets. And I have some information to share. So I have a third place, $100 Southwest Airlines gift card going to Shelley Lanham. And second place, I have another $100 Southwest Airline gift card going to Constance Lemaire. And then our first place winner is 2 round trip or 4 one-way Southwest Airline vouchers going to Deb Carr. So congratulations to all of you for winning those Southwest Airline tickets. Let's see if I covered everything. I think it looks like I have covered everything, so I want to thank you all once again. Go check out those auction items online, and until next time, I leave you with this quote. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. Thank you all for attending today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.